One of the 1993 Stunt Forum set. We have Stunt Forum sets going back to '89 if you're interested in the talks or the information on it. There'll be some good modeling tips and some talks from some of the top builders and flyers in the country. So we hope you enjoy this tape a lot. The people are already getting in here, lining up, and looks like we're going to have an excellent turnout today.
Wrinkles you can see. I pulled this one out and I said, well, it's got a little stain. The other ones are in the attic. Who cares?
These are the people that'll be speaking, and the thing they hopefully will be talking about. Try to cover the whole gauntlet of subjects that involve the world of stunt.
This year is awesome. Last year was a he lives in one kid working on it, the other still works with them, and you're helping him wait. So I guess you could fault on her. One of the How you doing, pal? Y'all ready for this year? Oh, absolutely. Yeah? You got a couple of airplanes to go? Yeah, they're great. How about you? You gonna fly the shooting? Yeah, right.
I covered it the second time.
Coffee.
Otherwise, everything's nice. Hey, Wendy.
Hello, hello.
How you doing? Brand new Fox 35 with a windy tongue muffler.
Oh, that definitely isn't going to work. It'll be nose heavy.
Oh, shit. Now you got to edit that. I'm sorry.
It's got a nice snap to it.
Still breaking in a little bit.
Yeah, whoa. Make sure Bob Hunt takes plenty of chances.
Anyone who is not
That's great. All right. Hey, I'll take all the publicity I can get.
There you go.
Now, if you had this right, you'd have some slinky young lady come up here, you know, in a bathing suit or something, walk around like at a boxers match.
It hasn't been raffled yet, has it?
It's too bad we don't have any women, you know?
Never say never. We'll go to Haraz and get a couple.
Get it? Yeah. I know you'd know where to get them, too.
And I said,
Now you have sheeting, you put this out on the cradle, sheeting will be sitting straight out. Now you put everything back in the
no bridging, no beam,
A lot of work.
He shot that goddamn beam up Super Jackson, and he was 6.5. Wayne Gilchrist, who is the president of the Garden State Circle Branch.
Okay, well, welcome to the 1993 Stunt Forum. I guess as the executive committee of the Garden State Circle Burners, we have voted on having this on a Saturday, especially for some of the people like Steve Buso there that comes down from Albany in the snow on our February meetings at night for 2 hours.
Get home at 4.
Get home at 4? That's okay. You must have made a stop. But anyway, we voted to have it on a Saturday. Hopefully we've got a pretty well planned program here for everybody. We will cater a lunch, and like I say, there's coffee and donuts in there. Feel free to go in at any time, pick some up. I will go and pick up the catering. We have catering for 100. I don't see 100 people here, so we can all eat well. And we should have a pretty good time at it. First of all, before we even get started, I want to thank all the speakers and people for coming, and I'm sure this is going to be a success. The other side of it is, and I keep pushing this, I don't know how many people here get Prop Wash. It's our club newsletter. It usually runs between 20 and 30 pages, and it comes out 4 times a year. We also take any article sent in for it. It's not just an inter-club thing. So if you've got a technique or something you want to write about and send in, feel free to do so. Subscriptions are $10 a year, and we'll take those from anybody at the door. We also obtained from Wendy Ornowski a Cardinal kit. The Cardinal kit runs $149.95. And with that, Wendy has donated to the Garden State Circle Burners the 4 videotapes of how to put this plane together. So you're looking at about a $225 value. The tickets are $5 a piece or $5 to $20. So somebody's going to walk home a happy camper today. And I don't want to hold this up much longer. I'm going to get into the technical stuff, so I'll turn it back to Tom to introduce the first speaker. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Wayne. We're doing our darndest to try to get interesting subjects, and later on I'll be passing out index cards for suggestions, probably about halfway through the day. But in the meanwhile, we're trying to cover everything from construction to Pampa to the World Championships, and anything else we can fit in that anybody here could even ask a question about. And without saying anything more, I want to get going because we have, if you take the agenda, we have quite a bit, hopefully, that we can cover. First on the schedule is Bill Lindeman. Bill is one of those guys that's been around for a little while.
Forever.
He says forever, but Wendy says too long. And if I keep repeating all this, I'm in trouble. But Bill's going to bring us back a little bit. This is not our old-time stunt forum, but we're going to present something that has a lot of people have asked about over the years, and it's an old process that seems to be a mystery to all of us today because we put all these super finishes on airplanes, and I think Mike Spedalier is about the only one I've seen recently with a pro stunt clear airplane. Bill's going to talk about the techniques of dyeing silk span and getting this somehow to work and not be all over the airplane and so on and so forth. And he also has some items he's handing out here very graciously. And as soon as he finishes that, Bill, can you run? Bill Lindeman.
I'd rather not have get away with it. Today I feel like the apprentice sitting at the feet of about 50 masters. And I'm very happy that the Circle Burners asked me to contribute what little I can. The modeling is a number of very, very simple disciplines. You know, but there are so damn many of these simple disciplines that most of us don't have enough lifetimes to master all of them. That's the way I feel. One thing I have done for an awful long time is in silk span with one of our models. I passed around a sheet, an outline. on the procedure, and I will try to follow that. Hopefully I'll leave a minute or two at the end. If we have some questions, we'll be able to answer them. I've brought one of the comments that was made to me about tinted silk stand is its durability. Gee, I heard it cracked easy, it doesn't stand up. This model here, it ain't pretty, but it's 15 years old. And it's a sheeted foam, and the wings and the elevator were covered in tinted silk stand. That held up pretty well. There's no cracking on it. The painted portion is all shut down, but the silk stand holds up pretty good. Now, this was hanging in my cellar, kind of like this, in a dark, dank corner of my dungeon for probably 12 years. And you'll see later on, we'll discuss one of the disadvantages of silk stand is that it fades. See the difference in that in the bottom. And the bottom of it is probably 10 shades lighter than it was when it was first made. But it is durable. Now, one of the first things you want to do if you're contemplating tinted silk span, you want to decide that at the very beginning of your construction that you're going to use this. Because if you have any errors in the construction where you want to put body filler or DAP or any filler, it's going to show through. It's going to be unsightly. So the woodworking wants to be pretty good. If you make a mistake, if you make a gouge, maybe it's better to make a new piece than to try to repair, because it will show through. As with all construction, sand, sand, sand. Get that wood as perfect as you can. If there's any area where you have a question or a doubt, sand some more. The procedure that I have here is what I use. Every step of the way, I'm sure there are other acceptable ways of doing it, but this seems to work for me. Prior to putting the silk stand on, I usually put 2, 3, 4 coats of dope on. These are 50-50. I brush them on. One of the coats might be a filler material, a sanding sealer. And between each one, I sand the hell out of it. Give it a couple days to set up if you can, and sand it lightly. We all have our own techniques for that. We do it our way. Now, before we actually mix the material and get to work, we're going to have a couple things to consider. If you follow my outline, I use silk span only from one lot for a particular model. I have found that lots purchased, even the same brand, a year or two apart, take the tinting differently. The difference might be subtle, but when you compare one panel to another, it's noticeable. So I'll buy enough material. Well, I did that 10 years ago. I bought enough material for the next 30 planes. So it's all one lot. Won't necessarily be different, but it might. I then decide, let's say we're going to make red. I'll make I'm skipping around a little. I'll make a test frame. Now, we haven't done anything about mixing or anything, but I'll make a test frame. Because what's written on the box of Tintex or RIT isn't necessarily what it's going to look like on silk span. I have here a couple of these I'll pass around. And I'll get a color that I think is good, this yellow. Then I'll rummage about and get a highlighter. And I'll mark the highlighter on the board, put a couple coats of dope on, make sure I've got a reasonable match there. Now we think we know what color we want. We want a red. I get a packet of red Tintex or RIT. The way I mix it up, I don't mix it up according to the packet instructions. I take about a gallon of water, dump about half the packet in, stir it. Sometimes you have to heat it. I think that's a little more concentrated than they use for cloth. Sometimes you have to heat it a little to get it all into solution. I keep it in a glass gallon container, and it'll last forever. I then make my test frame. There are a couple of variables to the color density that you get. One is the concentration of the dye in the water. Two is the length of time you hold the material in the water. And third is the heat of the material. All of these can be varied. You could probably do it cold. I do it hot. So I put the silk span in a container. I use this, or one I have along that's a little longer, because I can put the silk span in without making a double fold. Put it in and just lap it over and go like this. When preparing the test frame, I'll start, and I always heat the dye to 150 degrees F. I have a little thermometer here I put in. I don't know why, it's just a number I use on everything, and that's one of my constants. I know from my test frame now, I have an idea of what I'm looking for. And I know what color. When I make my test frame, I always dope it also. Because on some of the colors, the dope changes the silk span. I've had dark blues, and after I doped it, turned out to be the ugliest purple you ever want to see. Most of them don't change very much. But make your test frame with dope, the same silk span you're going to use. If you're going to, like I often do, cut tissue and put it on the silk span before the finishing, I'll put a piece of tissue on, because sometimes the colors run on the tissue. Black or dark blue or whatever colors we get. If on our test frame we don't like the color or the shade, we can change it to some degree. Some colors you can change by lengthening the duration of the soak. Some colors reach their maximum density in 30 or 40 or 50 seconds, and if you leave it in for another 2 or 3 minutes, it isn't going to change it. This you just have to find out. On that test piece I'm passing around, there's a blue. The Tintex package said royal blue. To me that was a little too light. I just didn't like it, knowing that it's going to fade anyway. The only way I could darken it, I let it soak longer and it came out exactly the same. So I got some navy blue, mixed a little navy blue with it, and that darkened it. So you have a lot of flexibility, just like mixing up dope. You mix a couple of colors together and it will change, maybe for the better and maybe it'll get worse. But the only way you know that is by making your test frame. When you do the final product, follow the protocol you use with the test frame and it should come out pretty good. If on your highlighter, and we'll get to the highlighter a little later. On the highlighter, if you're not satisfied with the color, sometimes you can run it down a second or a third time. That will darken it a little. Now, the actual covering, we're satisfied with our test frame. We've put a couple coats of dope on it. We've selected a highlighter that is pretty close to the same color. And we think we're ready to cover. The way I do it is I use the largest sheets possible. In the case of the wing, now we all have our own ways of doing it. I cover the wing before assembling the wing into the fuselage. To me, it's easier. So I'll have this wing section on my lap. I will take the silk span and I will cut it roughly to shape. We've all done that. Give yourself 1.5 inches, 2, 3 inches overlap. And I'll take a magic marker and I'll mark 1/4 of the silk span. And I know that quarter goes in a certain orientation here. After I wet it, and when I'm doping and trying to do 8 things at one time, I don't want to have to figure out, now which way did this silk span go? So I'll mark it, and I'll know that with the wing on my lap, that mark goes right here, or here. I put the silk span in the hot liquid. If the liquid has cooled off while I'm puttering around, as I do with my ears and my thumb, I'll grab a scoop of it, put it on the hot plate, let it warm up, dump it back in. When it's roughly 150, put the silk span in. I use a long container because I don't want to fold back on it. I want it to be in one plane only. This is too big. I'll let it sit for that period of time I've determined on the test frame, and I'll dump it on the floor on a piece of newspaper. You don't have to pat it, just lay it on the newspaper. I'll grab my wing. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. Neither way is right, neither way is wrong, whatever rattles your cage. When I do a wing, I do it in one piece. Obviously, you can't paint over it. You don't want a double thickness because it will give you a different color if you have a double thickness of the tinted. So I'll start at the back. I'll wrap it around, bring it around front. I'll smooth it down a little, then I'll run dope down the back and the front, smooth it some more, and then pull it a little this way. I don't dope the inner surfaces. You can, but if you don't, the silk span, when it dries, pulls up, it shrinks, and with a smooth surface, which we have because we've sanded and doped, it'll slide a little and move into position. You pull the edges. Don't worry about your trimming yet or your compound curves. Just get the big surfaces and let the drying do its part. I cover the top first. The top is what people see. And when you bring it around, wrap it underneath, you are more likely to get a wrinkle on the bottom side or the second side than you do on the top. So I do the top first and bring it around. Compound curves such as tips, around here, after it looks good, this is still damp, you can squeeze it with a spray bottle if you want. I'll work it around much as the fellows do with the plastic. Work it around, put some dope on it, and where we get a wrinkle, I will make a cut in it. Wrap one side down, put the other side over. Now we have a double lap because we've lapped one over. After I do that, I'll take a razor, carefully cut down. I'll pull the bottom out from the one, the top out from the other, and the 2 butt together. And you do this as many times as necessary, some 4, 5, 6 times. If you see on this tip, you look closely, I've cut and lapped probably 5 or 6 times on either one. Bringing it around the edge the same way. Bring it around carefully, some dope, 50-50, maybe a little glue, and a little double thickness there, nobody will ever know. Now, trailing edges. Couple options here. The trailing edge of the wing itself, on this one, I trimmed the bottom with a razor while it was still damp. It's close as I could. When I do it, my eyes aren't what they used to be. I use a jeweler's loop. I get right down in there and I trim it as good as I can. On the flaps, I feather my trailing edges. So this trailing edge on this one is probably less than a 64th of an inch. On this plane, I just lapped it, brought it to the edge, trimmed it, doped it, and then sanded it. And you can see that the trailing edge is wood colored. If I were to do this now, I would, before the final finishing, after I got a coat or two of dope on, I would take my sanding block and I would sand down this to make sure there's no dope residue. I would take my magic marker that we matched on the test frame, and I would run the magic marker right down the unpainted dope. Magic marker sinks in, your color match is almost perfect. If somebody isn't looking for it, they will never see it. The magic marker can be used for these trailing edges. Magic marker works beautiful. If any of you fellas ever make rubber models for a change of pace to mark around that 1/16 of an inch or 40 mil framework on the wings and empennages.
Tom, can you take an additional comment in 10 seconds? Sure.
Dump another piece in.
Okay.
I don't.
The other thing you can do with your Tintex that really works well, if you're building I have a Stuka that I built with modern day nylon barrel hinges in it. If you want to dye those to the same color as the silk span, you can make it look really sharp and there's no extra work. You just throw everything in the Tintex bath and all of your hinges, if you use exterior nylon horns, they all come up the same color.
I never thought of that.
Can you throw cats in there too?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bill. $40. And $5 each for a ticket, or 5 for 20. Carl?
I've never been up in front of a group to do a public speaking demonstration that took less than 45 minutes, so, but I'll try, as Tommy said, to do this in 2 minutes.
I don't need to talk later.
Me either, Twister. It doesn't look like it really, but because it has a built-up fuselage. It's covered with that foreign material known as heat shrink film, which some of us who are in a somewhat regressed state of model development still use. It's quite easy to apply, it's quite easy to repair, and it's for generally lazy people who can't spend about 100 hours doing rubbing out and whatever. The black on this is hobby epoxy, about 4 coats of hobby epoxy, each coat rubbed in between. All these surfaces are fiberglass. The cowling is a fiberglass cowling that's commercially available. The landing gear is courtesy of Wendy Erknowski. The wheel pans are carved out of solid balsa, also glassed and covered with hobby epoxy. The spinner is a true turn. The engine is a very old-fashioned loop scavenged OS Max 35. The push rod is buried inside the fuselage, and it's an arrow shaft, which will please Wendy because that will give very, very straight and true movements on the tail surfaces. So it's one other thing, the aluminum covering, which I was a bit disappointed with, is Presto, which I had trouble with bubbles and trouble smoothing out. In fact, I put too much heat on it, which caused a halo effect. You can see the name on the wing is New Twist for the Twister. So this is my effort. I'm a bit of a maverick, I think, as far as doing things the way most people do, but I do get a kick out of being somewhat different, and I I just hope it flies as well as the effort I put into it. Thank you.
And on, ended up with so many usages that we ended up with a lot of originality and a lot of development of designs. So my hat's off to Carl for a nice touch to a twister. Next on the agenda, we have one of the pros as far as buildings. Gee, he's looking at the wall. It's the guy up against the wall. I think after he gives a little talk, I think you'll agree with us. Joe Adamusto.
Hey!
Thanks, Tom. I'm going to try to yell rather than using the microphone. Can you hear me back there?
No!
First of all, I'd like to thank Garden State Circle Burners and Tom Niebuhr for inviting me. I get excited about this. Last year was my first time here, and I learned a lot of things. And you know, by Tom calling me a pro, that's an extreme compliment because when I look around this room, if there's anything I really learned about flying stunt and building stunt airplanes, it came from the people that are in this room right now, believe me. Okay, to get started, and I promised Tom I'd only have 5 minutes to talk about this a method of constructing an elliptical shaped wing. Everybody should have a pass out. And this is important because I'm going to refer to this so you can follow and try to make some sense about what I'm going to discuss here. But in an effort to maybe steal from the two preceding speakers where they talked about being a maverick and trying to do things different, maybe that's what elliptical wings are. And I thought about this quite a bit, and you don't see elliptical wings at the contest. I don't hear a lot about people saying, hey, I'm building a new elliptical wing. Either one of two things may happen here. Number one, that maybe most people think elliptical wings are ugly to look at. Or secondly, maybe they feel they're too hard to build. But that's where maybe this little explanation I have will maybe help you simplify building the one and come in handy. And by the way, to pass out here and try to outdo Bill Linderman, I gave you enough paper to either take this home and read it or file it away or line your parakeet cage with it, whichever you prefer. But, what I pictured on the front here is my Bucks Deluxe airplane, which was my last year's stunt ship. This year I plan on campaigning a big 60-size Cardinal Pattern Master type airplane, but my new plane that I'm working on at home right now is a new elliptical ship, and I basically use this construction on it. So, to start with, I'll refer to some figures here. You can look back at whatever figure I'm referring to in the drawings, and if I read a little bit, it's not because I'm trying to insult your intelligence, it's just that that's the only way I can make sure that the right words are going to come out in the proper sequence. But at any rate, if you're tired of straight increased aspect ratio stunt wings, why not try an elliptical shaped wing? I personally feel that they're interesting to look at because of the curves that are involved. They're also graceful to see perform in the air. Every once in a while, I can talk somebody into flying one of my airplanes for me, and I get a chance to look at it, and I like the way the curved wings look. One of the most important things I feel is the fact that elliptical wings work with less energy absorption. And I guess maybe that's just another way of saying it. They're pretty efficient type deal. First thing you have to do when you're going to build elliptical wings, you got to have a good plan, just like any model airplane you're going to work on. But if you refer to the wing plan, it's like about the 4th or 5th, and I hope I have most of these pages in sequence here. You'll see that there's a Bucks Deluxe Semi-E2 sample wing plan form. And if you wanted to, this is a rough sketch. It's not quite up to Steve Busso technique, but if you would enlarge this, I don't know, 200%, it'd give you about a 700 square inch wing. This is what my new wing looks like. Not off the glass tables yet, but maybe sometime in the future. But I have a very small place to work. It's basically an 8x9 bedroom. So everything I have to have is portable. We put up, take down, stick under the bed, those kind of things. But at any rate, first thing I do is make sure I have my parts properly constructed. Well, I like to build these wings, and by the way, this is just a technique. There's maybe 100 techniques. The only other technique I used to build an elliptical wing was the egg crate method that is the style that was used on that Novi 4 airplane. And the problem I found with that was that it was pretty hard to get the leading edge material, the sheeting, to stay glued to the ribs. If you did it right and worked fast enough, maybe it would stay. But the technique I'm going to explain here, you can get in and re-glue and double glue and make sure that that sheeting will really follow that contour. I also like to use 3/16 square spruce sticks that are laminated with 7,000 stick carbon fiber tape. You make 4 spars, that means you have to have 8 carbon laminates, top and bottom and so forth. It takes time to do this, but it's worth it, because you can get a lightweight, very strong wing that will take some abuse, and if you build a good wing, there's no reason why you can't use it in another airplane if your fuselage happens to break or something like that. Usually my leading edge for this kind of thing is, I use 3/8 square wood sticks that are made out of the punkiest lightweight wood I can find. This again is a weight saver, but when you sheet it and install it the way I'm going to describe here, it ends up being a pretty strong unit. The next thing I do is I make all my ribs. I'm not aware of a technique for using a stacked method of making ribs for an elliptic wing, because you know, every rib is different. And so what I do, and we can refer to this figure 1 that shows a sample. And these are just some sample random outlines of the ribs that I used in my Bucks Deluxe airplane. R2 is pretty much the root rib, R6 is a little further out, R9, R10, and so forth. And since I have equal panel type wings, what I do is I make, whatever it is, 8, 10 of one, 10 the same thing, you just double up and you have your sets of wings. But what I'd like to call your attention to here is that the balsa I use is, lightweight material that I can get that's kind of A-grain wood, and I lay these patterns out, I make them out of paper, cut them rough cut with scissors, except I don't cut the notches or the openings or the leading edge notch, and I paste them with rubber cement on sheeting. Then I rough turn with the knife and I sand it at contour with a sanding block. Then I'll notch out the leading edge to actually fit the leading edge material I have, make sure the spars fit exactly right. But I save the internal portions to support the rod and block type method. That's what I leave in. So I cut out what you see in the black spaces there to give me some open air, so that all I have is the necessary wood in these ribs to offer up the support I need for this rod technique. And then later on, of course, when the wing's built and sheeted, you pull the rods out, all you have to do is just get in there with the number 11 X-Acto and kind of follow the grain pattern, the grain structure in the wood, and just simply chip out the spaces that held that rib in position, and you're done. And it gives you a nice, neat internal configuration also. Can you hear me back there? Okay, good. All right, so then I make the ribs. I have them cut out. I have my trailing gauge shaped. I have the leading gauge kind of, how I want to have it and so forth. I make my plan form outline. I stick it down on my table. Oh, another thing I want to mention here on this page 2, figure 1, I talked about using a circle guide, a plastic circle guide with a piece of 3/8 tubing that's sharpened. I use that circle guide as a guide over the rib, and I take that tubing and I kind of spin it around and get a real accurate punch point, okay? But you have to have good, accurately drawn ribs to do that, because this is very important for your rod alignment. So after I have the holes put in, I left only the rod support tabs. Then I shape, if you look at, I guess it's one of these back sketches here, figure 3 shows a kind of a belt type support spar joint or a piece of rock hard maple. I make these 2 pieces up and have them available, but long story short, I have all my pieces made. Then I get ready to do my actual construction. Now, I use the rod and block technique where I use 3/8 diameter, either stainless steel rounds that are type 303 chrome nickel alloy. This, sounds like it's really getting technical, but the reason for stainless is so that it won't get corroded. You don't have to keep it waxed. Have it in the garage leaning up where the lawnmower usually is stored over the winter or something. It won't get rusty, and it's easy to keep clean. This is very important when these rods have to get withdrawn from your wing. Or I've also used, matter of fact, on my latest wing, I've used a type 304 stainless cold drawn stainless tubing, which is lighter. It's just not quite as rigid, doesn't have as much weight, but it also does a nice job. And I get a lot of questions on, okay, where do you get these kind of things? Well, there's a place down here in New Brunswick known as McMaster Car Industrial Supply Company. And you can buy this stuff there. In random lengths of stainless steel 3/8 rod, you can get a 12 to 17 foot section for about 20 bucks. Okay, cut it in two and you've got rod. Steel tubing's a little bit cheaper, about 17 bucks for a, you know, a 12-foot length. And this is, you know, one outlet where you can get your material. In our area down around the Philadelphia zone, there's the Industrial Supply Company on Cottman Avenue in Philadelphia where you can get this material. So it's not a super exotic item that, you know, is really hard to get. Just once you have them, I don't know, stainless steel will probably outlast you, and I lend them to people and they get used and returned and they can be used again. Okay, drill rod would also be a substitute, but I find that it's tough to get them in lengths longer than 36 inches, and you got to keep them buffed up and waxed so that they won't get rusty. Okay, so starting off the technique here that I use, I take that plan form and I paste it down on this wood building block, and if you refer to sketch number 2, figure 2, it shows that the setup that I have here. I have the inner and the outer panel wood blocks. It shows my ribs that are pre-cut with these spacer openings, the holes punched in them. I have the center support. I very slowly thread the ribs onto the rod, slide them through, being very careful that you don't upset this thing. And I like to take my wood blocks and kind of tack nail them, toenail them, if you will, with that wooden building block so that it doesn't move around on you. Because if you get surprised and tip the whole thing over, you'll crack your ribs, and you know, maybe that's one of the reasons why people think that making a wing with this technique's a little more difficult. But once you have them strung up over your plan view, you can line the ribs up so that you can get them in perfect alignment, use a tri-square or block or something to get them at right angles and straight configuration. Then after you have them all aligned and you have your support blocks kind of tacked down or set up so that they won't shift around on you, then you're ready to start putting other pieces together. If we look at figure 3 here, what I like to do first of all is put my trailing edge in. Okay, and then once I have that set up, then with the way I do wings, I've got these little curved wingtip trailing edge pieces that I shape in 3/8 flat stock. Shape them up to a nice taper so they'll fit in, so you have a nice transition with your sheeting will go over. And I put some lightning holes in it so that it'll, you know, take away some of that weight that's built up on that trailing edge. Then after I have those glued into position, and by the way, I would use like a thin CA for this part of the project. Next thing I'd do would be to install my leading edge material in that third mouth notch in the front of the ribs. And a butt joint in the center works fine for this. The fact that you're going to be using some real pump soft, lightweight balsa makes it easy to bend, but sometimes you get into a problem with the last rib or two on this kind of wing where it won't bend that easily. So what I do, I take my Zona saw and cut a bunch of kerf marks on the inside part of the leading edge material, and it gets it to bend real nice. And then you tack it in, CA that in, and then you got that part to do. Now you got to do your spars. And remember, these elliptical wings, they're not only elliptical in plan form. When you look at the front view, they kind of go elliptical from the center to the tips. That's what's really neat about these things. So when you install these spars, they're pretty stiff. They take this laminate, carbon laminate, really makes these spruce sticks very rigid, and that's where you get all this strength in this wing. So take that and tack glue that in, and you have to bend them as they go out towards the tips to get them to hold in position. You can do the top and bottom, or you can just do the top and wait till you turn this thing over to put your bottom in. If you have enough room and your blocks are high enough, and you can work under this thing, put your fingers under, between the ribs and so forth, you can get the bottom spar locked in. But this would be the next phase of the project. You'd have it set up. Now this is where I show that these spar joiners are positioned, but you're really at this stage not ready to install these. This just shows how that belt crank, suspended belt crank system would work. Okay, now if you'll note on this drawing, you'll see that my end ribs don't have any cutouts in them because there's no need to do the outboard wing, but the inboard where you have your adjustable eyelet or your adjustable lead-out guide, all lead-out guides maybe aren't the same, and you might want to just custom figure that thing in when you go to do it. Okay, then the next step is you begin the sheeting. And again, from your plan form, you could refer to, the approximate size. And I like to try to cut mine as accurate as I can before I install them. I like to do the trailing edge first, and obviously you have to do the top before you rotate this thing to do the bottom. So we just talked about doing the top sheeting first on the trailing edge. You cut it to size, you put it down. I like to use Ambroid. I like the way it smells. It brings back memories when I was 14 years old, locked up in the basement, using Ambroid.
Too much Ambroid, you forget what kind of drawings you do.
But that's why he always smiles, man.
Yeah, that's true. So I do the trailing edge material first, then I go off to probably the most difficult part here, and this I have to admit is something that I struggle with. And I'm going to kind of walk through this step by step. It's page 3. It starts with figure 7. Okay, the next step in the installation here would be the leading edge sheeting. And I like to say this is where the real fun begins. And I know from my own experience, this is the thing that frustrates me the most. And probably has frustrated anybody that's tried to take flat sheeting and bend it in a kind of a spherical radius for leading it to drive it nuts. Okay, what I try to do here is to avoid pins, because pinholes, you got to deal with those later if you want to try to get a real pro-type finish on these things. So, and plus I found pins don't hold anything when you're really trying to strain a flat piece of material over a spherical curve. So I use masking tape, and I'll get into this. I pre-trimmed the leading edge sheeting, and you got to understand that this the edge that goes against the spar is going to end up being curved once you have it in position. So you kind of got to cut the curve in this, pre-cut it so that when you lay it flat, it'll end up being a straight line. It's very similar to sheet metal stretch out drafting work, if anybody's ever done it. So you trial fit this piece, finger it over, and it may take 10 or 15 fits and tries until you really get it to where you need it. You got to understand that pins won't go through that carbon fiber laminate very easily anyway, so it's another reason why I like to use the masking tape. And the thing that I found is very helpful here is one of these masking tape dispensers like they have in the old butcher shops or whatever it is, where it's just weighted down, you can put it on a table, you got a fresh roll of masking tape, you can pull it out, take off an inch or two at a time, whatever you need, and when you start getting involved in this, you want to take it, unless you have an assistant there handing you pieces, the tape dispenser comes in handy. Okay, I try to pre-glue the trailing edge of the sheeting first, because that's the one you want to establish initially. So I pre-glue the top of the spar, pre-glue the edge of the sheeting that's going to be fixed to the spar, and I hold that in position and tape it down with masking tape, maybe 1 or 2 pieces in each rib bay, but you don't want to crank it down so hard and wrap it around the spar that you put a dent in your sheeting, because you want to have a nice clean edge there and then have a nice edge where your cap strip will bend into it. Okay, so the tape dispenser comes in handy because, as I stated here, it's all eyes, balls, and elbows when you get into this portion of the wing. So once you have the trailing edge of that leading edge sheeting down in position, then I use a glue gun with the aluminum tube, nozzle or end on it that I can bend to a contour, and I'll reach up under the sheeting and I'll pre-glue each rib.
Using Ambroid?
Ambroid, yes. Ambroid. It takes some of the pain out of this aggravation. But, yeah, so I use Ambroid in a little squeezy kind of glue gun, get it in there, get all the point or the rib glued up. Then I'll just use Ambroid, run out of a tube, put it across that 3" or 3/8 leading edge, and you get it all smeared down. Then this is where the real fun begins, where you have to actually take that balsa, ammonia spray, Windex with ammonia water, get the top surface wet, help bend it a little bit. And usually I like to have it on a bench in front of me, so I'm facing this and I'm pulling the leading edge down, take the tape and tape it over. And even if you get a little gap between your sheeting and your ribs, you can get back under this later on and re-glue it. That's the beauty of not having a solid spar in there, or an Nacrate type constructed type deal.
Joe, quick
Yes.
question. Your workbench, you have a wall in front of it? Or do you have an island workbench?
I just reset myself to have an island set up so I can walk around.
You walk around it. When you set this whole thing up with the rods and everything, it doesn't move until the wing is basically done, right?
Well, see, that's what I like about my board technique. Is once I have, let's say I get the whole top of the wing done, I just take the board and rotate it around like you're making a pizza or something.
If you don't do that,
Making a pizza.
For some reason, you set it up, if one of us is doing that, would you recommend having the leading edge facing you or the trailing edge?
Leading edge facing me, because the leading edge is a real critical part here. So After you pull that leading edge down and you get it taped and you're looking, and the ambroid has a little bit of working time to it, you know, and you can squeeze it, get the extra glue out, get it just right, look at it, and when you feel happy with it, then you're ready to go on to the next top leading edge section. And if you read this thing, you'll get a little better perspective for it, but then you do your other leading edge. I use a piece of scrap wood at the butt joint for the center of the two leading edge sections that come together to give me some support there. Then at this point, if I refer back to one of my sketches here, you'll see that the kind of sheeting techniques that I use is I try to use a couple of pieces of sheeting in the center, but I don't want to use a completely sheet over the center of the wing, because remember, the top is where your belt crane's going to have to go in and out, push rod, and you're not ready for that part yet. So all I'll do is put the aft part of the sheeting in and leave the wider pieces where the belt crank will be mounted open. Then I'll sheet in my wingtip places, and once that's done, let that harden up a little bit. Now you're ready to rotate the whole assembly over. So what you do here is you do it very carefully, obviously. You pull the pins out, or the nails, or the toenail, the block's into position, and just grab the wing by the trailing edge or leading edge. It doesn't matter. It depends on how you feel comfortable. You just rotate the whole unit, the rods, the blocks, and you set it down. The wing may sag a little bit until you can get your center support section back into position. That's another reason for leaving that center piece of sheeting out. Then you realign it, eyeball it a few times, measure. That always helps to make, because you don't want to have a wing that warps here, and this is one of the reasons for using the rods. And then you continue through and you do the trailing edge sheeting, the leading edge sheeting, and at this point you can install your spar joiner. It's pre-drilled, so your belt crank on that floating pin type setup will already be, ready and established. Sheet the center of the wing. And now you're ready to, once this thing hardens up, to pull the rods out. Okay, so you pull your toenails, spin the rods a little bit to make sure. I like to use masking tape on the ends of the bars just so they don't slip out on me while I'm rotating this thing over. Take the tape off, put a pair of pliers or something on the end of the bar, turn it, see if there's any glue that dripped on the rod, clean it off so you get a nice pull out. And I built 5 wings this way, and I think the second wing I built, I got trapped in my small workshop where I'm trying to pull these 60-inch long rods out, and I'm in a corner doing this by yourself, and you end up, you're stuck, okay? So make sure, that's right. So make sure that you arrange things so you have enough room when you start pulling, at least open the door to make sure you know what, you can damage the wing at this point is what I'm trying to say. But you pull the rods out, and you've got yourself a nice lightweight structure this way. The key thing here is just that it's basically Wendy's been building wings with rods like this for a lot of years, I'm sure, and probably a lot of you fellows have done it this way. I love built-up wings. It's like a chance to show off your craftsmanship a little bit. I tell people that are surprised to find out that I build model airplanes that this is the exotic woodworking that I do, which it is. And to build elliptical wings is a little bit like building a violin or a canoe. It's very intricate, but they can be built strong and durable and last. A few other things that I make notes in here that, I double tissue the center of the wing just to give me a little more strength in there. And one thing on the caution, I use 16 sheeting. I'm going to try a wing in the future where I'm going to use 3/32 for this spherical radius kind of bending of this sheeting. And it's very similar to what they do on building these I don't want to say rebuilt, but the new Cobra race cars that are made out of aluminum, they're hand-built. Actually, that aluminum sheeting is formed over bucks that are made similar to what the ribs and the spars look like. Where you bend it, you try it, you bend it, you try it, and you get it to form over the edge.
Formed over the Lux butt.
Pardon me?
Formed over the Lux butt.
The Lux butt, that's right. Yeah, the other thing I feel that would make building elliptical wings easier, or if I could get Jim Hunt to invent me a way of having some kind of a mold where I can throw a piece of sheeting in there and pull a lever down and have me a nice radius shell that I can...
You can pay for it.
What you might try is if you want to go to thicker sheeting, instead of going all at 3/32, you can have like 77,000 in stock cut right between the two, and it will get rid of any kind of rippling and it'll cut it for you.
Okay, that's a nice thing to know. But, I always struggle to get wood, probably just like everybody else does. And you kind of treasure some nice 5-pound stock if you can get it. And I've still yet to find a piece of 4 pounds with me in all the years I've been doing it. But You want to use light, like 6-pound, 5-pound wood for the leading edge on this, because it has to be pliable. You have to be able to work it in. One other thing, when you're doing the tissuing on here, and I know Bill talked about the silk span techniques, you don't want to put it on too wet, especially on this leading edge, because it'll break your heart to see that nice formed edge kind of get wavy and if you put too much water in it. So maybe next year's seminar or forum, I'll have my new elliptical wing two-pipe airplane up here, and you have a chance to see whether or not I did a good job on it. But that's about all I wanted to say. Thanks for, yes, sir, question.
What weight filter do you use?
Double live. Lightweight, yes.
Joe, have you considered using some of these slow set cyanoacrylates for that leading edge point?
Only because it would work too fast.
Well, some of the slow set out there, you can lay it on those ribs, and you can lay it on every surface, and as long as you don't touch it, it'll sit there for days without getting
Really?
And what you can do is just, same technique, starting at the trailing edge, and just sweep your hands over it. I've used this technique before. You sweep your hands over it slowly, and it sets as you're moving it. And if you really want it to kick quick, as you're holding down the leading edge, you can have your assistant get under there with some of the kicker and spray under there, and then it goes off like that. You don't have any waiting time, and it's accurate.
Joe? Yes, sir. I know another method. If you put a thin film of alphatic resin on top of the ribs, let it dry, a thin film of alphatic resin on the sheeting where the ribs go. You got to have it marked out, let it dry, set it in place, and iron it out.
That too.
Yes.
It doesn't smell as good as Android, though.
No.
Hey, if somebody wants to try a wing, let me know how you make out, or you can get my number in the pamphlet.
Number at the cyanoacrylate works in fantastic concert with the carbon fiber. Cyanoacrylate will kick like that with carbon fiber.
I still like to keep a little of the old with the new.
I don't blame you. I agree with you.
That's really good. One other thing that I found, and I want to mention this before I get off the stage here, but my original Bucks Deluxe had a pretty thin airfoil, similar to Steve's Kester airfoil design. That was pretty easy to do. This, I thickened up the airfoil on my new airplane, and by increasing the profile on these ribs, it increased the difficulty in getting that sheeting to bend. And if you go to, let's say, a Cardinal type, or a Pattern Master airfoil thickness, it's like 3 1/8 or something like that. It would really be a lot.
Stand around, see people drinking coffee.
Hey, it's possible. It's just something different. And
Non-club
it'd be
members
nice to see
have to
another
pay
curved
for it.
wing out there. Maybe next year. Thank you for your attention.
You can just see by his presentation, Joe is definitely one of the pros. And he's a pro guy, which is even best. We have a lot of people here today from out of town. In fact, we have one guy who might just get this distance award. I guess it's a toss-up between the Boston group and this other fellow. Gary Lutz just walked in. He's from Hagerstown, Maryland. Welcome, Gary.
Truck's not open.
Next we have, real quick, we have another very interesting airplane here. Mike Chiodo from Rocky Point, New York. Mike?
You all know what it is.
No, we don't.
It's a six-month
It's a nice...
I'm very flattered that Tom asked me to come up and say a thing about this. Being it is a film finish, and I don't really know the pattern too well, so I decided to put film on it because I don't know how long it's going to last. This plane I didn't build. A friend of mine, Don Herdman, from out on the island, built it, painted it with hobby epoxy, and it came out a bit too heavy. Then he decided, oh, I'm not going to play with the 35 size ships anymore. He stripped it down. He did the original paint scheme with the red, white, and blue, and the stars and everything. which I never really cared for. Anyway, it's nice. It came out beautiful, but it's too heavy. So he stripped it down completely, and it was still too heavy without the finish on it. So this is regular foam core wing with the sheeting. He cut out hole like that, put little 1/4-inch square balsa strips to simulate ribs, and it worked out really well. It's kind of like an I-beam now with no beam. And he cut out the tail sections and put geodetic ribs in there and the back of the stab there. So this thing is hanging on the wall now, and I come in this garage and I say, what are you going to do with that thing now? Because he didn't seem to have any use for it. He says, you want it, it's yours. So I said,
Where's he living? Does he have a van? I could use a new van.
Okay.
No respect.
Anyway, I brought the thing home. It was sitting around for a little while. I crashed my profile and decided, well, it's time to cover this and get something in the air. I don't have much building time lately. I just had another baby and stuff. So I said, what am I going to do? It was either use silk span and dope, which would look really nice, but I didn't have the time, and with the new baby in the house, the smell, my wife would not deal with that, because it tends to rise from the basement. So I said, okay. I had a roll of Coverite, the new space age covering they call it, the painted film. I said, this stuff looks okay. It seemed heavy. So I cut out all the panels. I cut everything out. I wanted to see what it would weigh. And that's with all the, all oversized panels. Put it on the scale, and it was like 4.5 ounces. So I said, that isn't too bad. So it's probably less than that when it's on the plane. And dope would probably be what? At least 7. If you use dope, 7, 8 ounces maybe. So I did my best to put it on and make it look like dope. And the trim, I said, what could I do to make it look pleasing without too much weight for the trim? Now, I'm a sign painter, so I have access to a vinyl cutting computer. Okay, they got to form a line, Mike. Where do you live?
For free.
By the way, he made those signs on my van out there, if anybody wants custom signs made.
Yeah, you want magnetic signs. See me at the end of this. These are hand cut, because I just took tracing paper, laid it out, did a quickie, hand cut that, stuck it on. But this is easy to work with. It's like 3 mil with vinyl. So I kind of stretched that around there and tucked it in. It worked out pretty well, better than I thought. This is just typed in the computer and cut. And then to finish it, I think, okay, because of this, it's adhesive, I said we got to do something to seal the edges of all the vinyl. So we took my friend Don, who gave me the thing, Hobby Epoxy Clear, and just shot over the whole thing, which added probably less than 1/2 ounce. We tried to go as light just to seal it up. And it also brought the shine up, so it looks a bit better than the original covering, depending on what you like, shiny or not. And last night I put a little wax on it because I got a Fox 35, a Windy, a Pro Stunt tongue muffler, which I just put on. I didn't do that. It flies pretty good. It's 41 ounces. I think originally it was with the Hobby Epoxy, it was like 50 plus. So yeah, he never expected it, but then it came out tail heavy. So Don kept putting nose weight in to get the thing to balance, and then it just got out of hand.
Does he want it back?
Too little.
That's all shrink. It's all monocoated or shrink film.
Yeah, it's all the
21st century.
you have 21st century Coverite, which didn't go on as easy as I thought it would. I mean, it worked, but it wasn't as easy to work with as something like Monocoat or probably the original Coverite, which was as easy to work with.
You must be great at diapers.
You will be. I'll do my
Either that or the diaper he's done is great at this.
So anyway, one thing. This has the formed plastic top, and from here back it's formed plastic. And when I was on the bottom scoop here, that's the one part that did not come out right. So I haven't turned it over. Don't turn it over. Okay. But if anybody tries this with the film covering, be very careful if you're on this plastic, what do you call it, ABS or whatever it is. Because I use an iron. I like an iron better than a heat gun. You get too many bubbles with a heat gun. So I use an iron on the whole thing. And as I was heating up and trying to work out some of the bubbles that I won't show you underneath here, the ABS started to sink, and it really pissed me off. What am I going to do now? I said, what am I going to do now? I took the heat gun, I heated up the ABS, and it actually started to blow it out, which I was amazed, but I said it worked. At 3 in the morning, I was very pleased. So, that's about it. So like I said, if you're going to try this on the plastic, be very careful with the heat. Set the setting at about, well, it depends, different irons are different, like 2.5 instead of the full max. I was using like 2 1/4 to do the whole thing.
Mike Rogers, question?
What do you use to take off the hobby box?
To what?
You said you took off the hobby box and you still covered it.
Oh, I didn't. My friend Don did. He used an orbital sander.
Mike, this is pro stuff.
It worked really well. I had to do a little fine sanding up here.
Not only a knife works.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you.
You know, I tapped him on the shoulder before, and he was in a bit of panic. I said, would you describe your airplane? And unlike Stevie B, I think he's a man of little words.
Tommy, I want 12 more minutes.
I'm sorry, Carl. You can come next year. There is one thing that Mike doesn't know, though. He got in a plug for his signs business. It is a paid advertisement in the sense that Mike has volunteered that when the bar opens, he's buying for everybody.
Order a pizza right now.
Next we have a very distinguished man. He's coming in.
He's late.
One of the mainstays of stunt in New England. And we're very fortunate to have him here. He's been the event director, not really event director, chief judge, I guess is the way to put it, at the Nationals for the last few years and this year coming. And if you want to talk rules and patterns and things like this, we'll have to have a whole day to do it. But Dave Cook is one of the good guys in stunt. And without further ado, Dave.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Kind of interesting listening to Joe talking about Ambroid. You know, I go back a couple of years at this point. I never used Ambroid, didn't like it. Wouldn't peel off your fingers.
Chew it.
It pieces of skin off. And when I started in this sport, I wanted the airplane within, in the air, within hours of opening that kit box. And the only thing that worked on that was tested the fast run. Now I take a little bit more time and I come out with cyano acrylic. But back then we didn't have it, and tested peeled off your fingers very nice. Good glue. How many guys here remember the difference between a fast dry and a slow dry test?
I go back to
I like Duco.
Bobby got high on it. Okay, I'm gonna have to be careful with this presentation now because I'm in Pattern's master country. And, what you're looking at is not really what I consider an airplane. It's a design philosophy and a construction technique. And I approached the hobby and have for quite a few years. This is a data entry screen off my computer. All those blocks in there are all the stunt ships that I have loaded, that I've looked at over the years. And I keep the information on everything from power to weight ratios, moment arm, barbell effect, a lot of things that I think are important. But the things I want to push today, I think the airplane has to be sized to the power plant. You pick your power plant first, then design the airplane around it. Too many guys go the approach, geez, I saw a pretty airplane, I'll go build it. Near the end, they start thinking, what do I put in it for an engine and a power package? I don't think you can do it that way. And as far as picking the size of the airplane for the power package, number one thing is probably weight. Because a Pattern requires vertical climbs. All the wing area in the world doesn't help you when you're going straight up. And it requires constant acceleration. Every time you turn a square corner, you've got to get back to speed. Turn another square corner, you've got to get back to speed. If your engine isn't capable of accelerating the weight you've got back to speed, that airplane's going to float all over the sky. People say, gee, it got light at 45. It got light for good reason. You've either got not enough power or you got too much weight. Pure and simple. So with that in mind, we approached going at a construction technique that would give me a light airplane, consistent airplane. I believe in evolution, not revolution. In other words, you locked in on a design. Sure, you can jump around a bit when you're starting up. But once you lock in on a design, stick with it and evolve it. Don't build something that's 800 squares and then come down to 650. Stick with one type of airplane, one control system, same ratios, so it feels the same. Every time you jump from airplane to airplane, you're relearning the connection between your hand and the airplane. Shouldn't be doing that. Stick with one type. Now, from my point of view, experience, thumb computer, I say a 60 can carry about 64 ounces going straight up. That's a pretty good weight. I like to get down in the high 50s, but no more than 64. From that, I size the wing area of the airplane, and I have some wing area loading, but I come down to as low as 640 square inches for a 60. The airplane's a good wind penetrator, turns corners, flies great. Now we've got to come up with a technique to build it light, build it consistent, and build it straight. And I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at the picture board over there. This is what we call a lightning core. You can make it look like anything you want from this stage. This is how it comes off the table. Everything you see here is on it when it comes off the table. This thing is locked to a building board with blocks under the leading and trailing edges. All the ribs are put in, tail is put on, fuselage is there, and everything is there when you pick it up. So it's straight. Now I can take the next bunch of wood, run it through the templates that we have. We have templates for all the parts. Parts are all the same. Assemble them on the same table and pick another core off and stick like this one. The airplane is built around a center line web, which the blocking comes up and picks up. So on that wing, at any time, I can pick up the exact center of that wing. Same goes for the tail sections I build, and everything is referenced. This framework was put together, God, I don't like to think how long ago.
Oh my.
7 years ago. 7 years ago, and it's still pretty straight. And the other thing is, this is carrying a control system in it, but you guys might want to pass it around and heft it. Go ahead and heft it, pass it back. Figure you got the wing, you got the fuselage. You got all the parts right there.
What does it weigh, Dave?
You had to ask me, Wendy, I'm not sure.
Bet you're happy.
Hey, it's light. Pass those around.
Oh, the lightning, right? It's got to be lightning.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it was named after the lightning hole. I also have a couple of other pet theories. I say the nose section, and again, I'm in patent master country. I have to be careful. There's two ways of keeping an engine in. One is make the nose section real solid, real rigid, beats the hell out of it. And the other is make it compliant, so it dampens out some vibration. If you make it what I call compliant, so it moves a little bit, you're going to have pretty good structure and pretty good strength. This is a doubler. And I use doublers as thin as 64th on a 60. And I can show you airplanes that have been around for 8 or 9 years. And no crack, no problem. Now the leading edge, the flaps that are being passed around, again, that's built on a 16 center wedge to keep it flat. You build the top half first, flip it over, add the ribs on the other half, and then it's sanded to shape. And they come on pretty light.
Then you cut out the center.
Then I cut out the center.
The center.
Yeah. Pretty simple process. It matches my building technique. That's Ron has built one, and he says, I wouldn't build another one of these goddamn things. He says, I broke every rib in it at least 5 times.
Is that true, Ron?
Absolutely. All you gotta do is run your knuckle across the top of the wing and you take every rib out. 1/10 to 1 second and you got 2 days work again. But it is a strong airplane, I'll give you that. We've had them wallop into the ground. The strength in the airplane is in the cover. We cover with medium weight silk span, cover wet, cover one piece most of the way, so we wrap around the leading edge. And once it's doped up, it's a pretty tough structure. We've had them all at the ground, come in hard. They might split paper once in a while, but they stay together. The spar that's in there is laminated. The spar, when it goes into the airplane, is in one piece. This is the Formica template for a spar. And what you can see, you cut 2 pieces that go halfway. But all the other pieces, this piece is then cut from there to there, and that lays over on either side. Then the next fish scale is cut, and that goes on either side. Then there's a 30-second plywood centerpiece, and then we bend it so it matches the high point of the wing as we laminate it up and put it together. So all in all, it makes a pretty rugged airplane. It's consistent. If you like parts and pieces, it's a good airplane to build. If you are a foam type and you like big chunks, maybe not.
What was the technique called?
This?
The building technique that you use?
Well, it goes back and probably starts with a technique called the Detroit Stunner in the Erie, and it's I-beam. This being the eye in the beam.
Thank you.
Let me tell you, it takes 90 days to build one. 89 days to cut out the parts, and one Saturday afternoon with hot stuff to glue them all together, and it's done.
The airplane actually has got 30 to 40 hours building time in it. There's been about 16 or 17 of those built up in their area, and they all look different. These are the ribs. We cut out the rib sections. That's a stack of ribs for one airplane. Now, if anybody's got any questions, we'll be around for a while, but I don't.
Show that in piece up for the... Those are the jigs, yeah, those are important.
Yeah, when it sits on the table, first thing we do is run the spar through the fuselage. Fuselage goes together first. And then we put these fixtures out. And this fixture picks up the T-shaped leading edge, T-shaped trailing edge, and the spar. And it locks it at either end of the wing. trailing edge and leading edge so they stay straight, and then we begin putting ribs in. There's a little bit of an internal D-tube put inside it that just helps to stiffen that spar. It makes the flanges on the beam.
Are all those ribs cut from the same template?
Yeah. What we do is we have a slot template. We cut balsa wood 10 inches long, butt it together, slide them into the template, one stroke of a razor blade. Yeah, same idea as the Aries. And much of this technology is, quote, stolen from the Aries. If you're going to get good and stunt, you're going to pride yourself on your ability to steal from other people's ideas.
By the way, that I-beam wing design, the originator of the I-beam wing was Rob Ferris. Yeah. So in case anybody wants to know who did that first.
Yeah. And it's a good construction technique.
Something called the Jupiter.
Jupiter?
Yeah, it won something at the Nats somewhere back. Farris?
Yeah, it was quite a ways back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he invent the wheel?
Worked together, and Art had an airplane called the Atom, which I think was the second or third one built that way.
The tail sections are templated, and essentially this becomes the 16 sheet which you build up that tail section on, if you saw the tail section built up. And these airplanes will come out, I can bring a 60 ship in, just a little under 60 ounces with a halfway decent finish. The 85 Nats airplane, which was jet style with tri-gear, came in just a little under 60 ounces, and that was a good flying airplane. We flew it one of the real windy days at the Nats, and we had people swearing at us that the wing was flexing 3 inches. I doubt it, but it stayed straight, did the pattern, that's what counts. And nobody said that I got the lead outs in the wrong side yet.
Depends where you put the top block.
Always gonna zing you when
Oh, yeah.
These guys are putting.
They were.
With friends like Ron, I don't need enemies.
Dave?
Yeah.
Question. I noticed that is this reinforcement, the balsa on this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a simple trick that's been around for a lot of years.
Rather than the
You take a straight push rod and wrap balsa around it on that sharp piece, and that stiffens up the rod.
Jim was commenting that the only thing that would be a negative, he felt, would be to carve blocks would be difficult to get around the wing and so forth, and it could be. What you could do is make up a separate fuselage crutch very accurately, and carve your blocks using the bogus crutch, and then take them off and put them on this. That would work fine.
Most of my top and bottom is done with sheet anyhow. I don't do a lot of. If I carve blocks, I laminate package balsa, and I pre-saw them.
So you have paper built in.
Yeah, so it's got a taper built in. And, but like I say, that's a core. Do anything you want with it. Make it look like a Nobler, Aries, anything. Okay, I'm set.
Thank you, Dave. Tucson. Sometimes stunt has in really what is popular and it's low. There was. George Aldrich, John said.
Original meat profit was Steve, the well-deserved.
Man here who maybe. Next we have a guy who has a history of really giving short talks.
You're on the clock, Steve.
Is lunch back yet?
And I might say he is one of the hardest builders too. Steve Lusso.
Can you hear me back there?
No.
I'm gonna use this thing. Because I have no handouts, I have no photographs, no overlays, no slides. All I have is just a couple ideas. A little qualification statement. Yes, the last 2 years in a row I've made front row at the Nats, and in '91 I did win concourse, but that was, of course, flash and trash. That was the paint scheme, not the finish, right?
Yes.
No. Because if you don't have the finish right and the basics down right, paint scheme isn't going to do anything for you. All right, you cannot hide mediocre woodwork or workmanship with a coat of paint. It won't work, ever. Not once. Not once. All right? You've heard Bill talk about sand, sand, sand. Joe, sand, sand, sand. That's the secret, sanding. You got to get right at the very basics, good workmanship on the structure itself, whether it's a foam wing, open bay, I-beam, anything. You've got to have top-notch workmanship on the structure. First off, no substitute, period. Then you got to set a goal. Kind of philosophical here. You have to set a goal. How good do you want it to be? How good do you think you can make it? Because that goal is going to have to power you all the way through, right to the very end. Is it good enough? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. What do you do if it isn't quite good enough? You say, forget it, maybe next ship. Most of us do. Some of us, very few of us, say, no, I'm going to do it again. That takes guts, that takes time, that's a lot of work. There is no substitute for work when it comes to finishes. I'll go, I guess Vic is doing a more detailed talk later on detailing the thing, little things like that. I'll bring it from wood up to basic base coat paint. And all I've got to say is how I've done the last 2 ships. They worked out very well, and they're relatively simple. As few steps as I could get away with. I know Mike on his new ship here, he's gone even fewer steps, trying a few experiments, and it looks like it's worked out just fine too. Okay, so basically you want to have the nicest finish for the fewest steps possible you can get away with. But again, each one has to be done very, very well. Bare balsa airplane, sanded with 600. The whole thing. Make sure everything fits. All the dents and dings are filled with DAP. That's what I use. Sand's best of any kind of filler I've found.
Which DAP?
The heavyweight stuff. Not the lightweight stuff. The lightweight stuff I found tends to harden the balsa around it. And when you're sanding, it just won't flatten out. So 600 grit, you're ready to go. 2 coats, unthinned, SIG clear. Not light coat. You can do light coat, you can do regular. As far as I can see, it doesn't matter. 2 thick coats, brushed on the whole plane. I'll do it with a foam wing. That's my last 3 experiences. So I'm not going to get into too much detail as far as a D-tube or an I-beam wing. After you sand with 400 grit very lightly in between those 2 coats. So you've got 2 coats of clear on, sanded with 400 grit. Then you cover it with silk span. I do it wet.
With or without a block? Those light sanding?
Oh, with a block.
Okay.
Always with a block. Use as large a block as you can get away with. And I have gotten into the habit of using foam blocks, styrofoam. All right, you get a wing, you get a foam wing, you get the cradle piece of stuff, cut it up, make sanding blocks out of it. They're very, very useful, and they conform slightly to the curvature of, say, the airfoil. You can make small ones for fillets. Thousands of uses. Silk span wet over the entire airplane. Okay, then you've got, once the whole thing is applied, you've got 3 coats here, you've got no coats there of clear dope in the adhesion process. What you want to try to do is get it up to about an even 3 coats of clear on the entire structure once all the tissue covering is on. 3 coats, I use light coat at this point in time. Once I'm dealing with tissue paper or silk span, I use light coat. That's brushed. All right. Then, and again, sanded in between, 400 grit lightly with a block, just to get the fuzz off. Keep getting the fuzz off, all right, or else it'll build up and it'll be hard as hell to sand off later. So in between each coat, just sand it very lightly. Yes, sir? Yes, at that point in time it is thinned. In the tissue application and thereafter brushed on, we're talking maybe thin 25%. All right, still pretty thick. All right, but about 25%. It's far thicker than spraying consistency, which is thinned about 100%. That's what I do. Yes?
What's your drying time in between coats?
Drying time is about a day. Okay, 24 hours, one a night, that kind of thing. Yes?
What's
What thickness is the silk span?
I'm using medium grade, I think. Who puts it out? K&S?
Yeah.
Okay, medium grade silk span. Watch your grain lengths. Okay, silk span has a grain. I think Bill Lindeman mentioned it earlier. It's got a 1 unidirectional grain. All right, you want the grain going the long ways. I'm not going to get into how do you wet cover a structure. That's an entire hour's talk. That's a demo here. Can't do that on this talk right now. All right. Bill was shed a lot of light on that issue earlier. All right, and maybe next year we'll have somebody do tissue covering wet. But all right, you got 3 coats of clear dope, thin somewhat, on an airplane that is completely covered with tissue. Now, back up a bit. The last 2 airplanes I've done in a modular basis. Again, I've covered the wings separately, the stabs separately, elevators, flaps, everything is done separately. Then they're put together into one piece in the fuselage, then the fuselage is covered. All right? I've also gone through the filler coat and the sanding of the filler coats before it's all glued together. Now, this comes to the most important single step in the entire finishing process, something Mike Rogers said, do this, it'll work great. He's right. I've done it on the last 3 ships, it works great, but be prepared to work. Mix a concoction of 1/3 clear, 1/3 color, and 1/3 talc. Pick a color. Let's see, 3 years ago it was blue, 2 years ago it was green, last year it was orange. Next year, maybe silver, I don't know. Something bright I've used because when you're sanding this stuff off, you want to see it disappear. You want to see where it is, what's left on the airplane. Why is it a lot of work? It's a lot of sanding. And you, with a 1-inch brush, you take this concoction, and you've got to mix quite a bit. You've got to mix quite a bit because you're going to put it on, you're going to slap it on relatively thick on the plane. You're not going to brush it out and brush it out and brush it real thin. Take a nice 1-inch brush, get a whole scoopful of the thing in the brush because with the talc, that 1/3 of it is talc. It tends to dry relatively quickly, and once you have it, you're spreading it out on the surface of the airplane. It tends to pull away from it. It granulates. It pulls away from each other. You can get cracks later on if you try to spread it out too thin. All right, just baste it on. You're basting a turkey at this point in time. You want a thick, ablative coating like the X-15 used to have. Okay, they used to spray this stuff on because it would burn off at Mach 7. And the airplane now weighs a pound more than it did. All right, I mean this stuff. I mean it is just there. It has dried. Let it dry for 4 or 5 days if you can. If you've got the time, ideally that's what you'd like to do. Then you've got to attack it with sandpaper. Mike has recommended. I have used. It is the Triamite.
Yeah.
Free cut gray sandpaper, not the black stuff, not the wet or dry. It's gray, a light gray. Okay, and it doesn't fill up as much. All right, available in a lot of some hardware stores, auto places, things like that.
Yeah, in reference to that Triamite paper, I found that if you just have a block of foam rubber laying around as you're sanding, rather than slap the paper on the table to clear it, just rub it across the foam, and it completely clears the paper.
Foam rubber?
Yeah, just a piece of foam. Yeah, foam rubber.
Foam rubber rather than styrofoam?
Yeah, not styrofoam, it's regular foam rubber.
I use my jeans. See, I have a blue pair, a green pair, and an orange pair.
You couldn't use an orbital sander at this time?
No orbital sander. Who's the guy with the orbital? Keep him out of here.
Neighbor.
Well, I don't know if you can, Ron. Go ahead. You've used mop and glow at the mats. Use an orbital sander.
That's a lot.
Bob, I saw your hand first.
One thing, Vic thought about the foam rubber.
Yes.
You have 2 steps. After you get done finish sanding your airframe,
right,
prior to putting on any dope,
right,
take a piece of foam rubber, clean piece of foam rubber, and pull it grain-wise with the grain across the wood, and it'll pull out all the dust out of the wood.
Still
every
clean
bit
it.
of it.
Yes. Question.
What grit sandpaper was that for the finish?
I think I'm starting with 240, then going to 320, then 400. 240, then 320, then 400. You're doing the entire airframe with 240, then the entire airframe with 320, then the entire airframe with 400. You've sanded the entire airplane 3 full times as carefully as you possibly can, using a foam block at this point. For fillets, a little piece of foam that has an edge to it, and you wrap the sandpaper around it, and it just gets right in the fillets, little tight places. Little blocks you can make for certain areas, big blocks for the size of fuselages or wing panels, things like that. You do have a question, Mike?
Yeah. 1/3 clear, 1/3 talc, 1/3 color. What about the thinner to make it penetrate into the lower?
No thinner, 0.
So it's just laying on the top?
You bet. It's an ablative coating laying there on the top, stuck like mad to the tissue.
Only a filler.
Mike?
It penetrates. It does.
It sticks. It ain't going. It's not going to fall off. Try sanding it off. It's not going to fall off.
Just as another guide for somebody, if you're not using a block on the leading edges, which you can to cut it, you may want to take that foam rubber that Vic was talking about and just use it as a backing for your leading edges and stuff.
Yeah. Not a bad idea. Watch your corners while you're at it. Watch the corners, you know, where the hinge lines are, stuff like that, because bingo, it'll disappear. Now, anybody that's put clear on and try rubbing it out as carefully as you can, bingo, there goes the paint. All right, so watch your corners. All right, but basically this is the #1 and most important process in having a good surface finish to your airplane after the woodwork. All right, again, you can't hide poor woodwork with this step. All right, now at times I thought I could like glue toothpicks to the surface of the airplane, put this stuff on, sand it, you'd never see it again. Which could be possible, all right, but again, it won't hide poor workmanship. So you have sanded this airplane 3 full times as carefully as you possibly could, and you have this model colored, let's say we used orange like last year, an orangey balsa looking thing here and there. Well, not all of it's gone. All right, gee, there's a patch here that I just can't seem to get off. It's smooth, it feels good. Close your eyes and you feel it feels pretty good. Leave it. Leave it. All right, don't wreck the airplane. All right, you've gotten 99.9% of the filler off, by the way, by then. Once you're done, you've gotten an enormous amount of this material off the plane. And you don't want it on the plane, you want it off. Now, if you've got, are we on TV? Yep. If you've got guts, do it again. Do the whole thing again. Thanks, Steve. Mike, have you done that twice?
Well, I use a little different method. I don't take it 99.9% off. I take it down to the point where the tissue, the covering that you're using, is still filled. You don't want to take it down to the point where you're actually seeing paper fibers coming through the talc.
Right.
That's the purpose of it. And instead of putting a whole nother coat on, which is just time consuming, you just dab it, candle it in an incandescent light, find out where the spots are low, and just candle it and put a little dab of talc in those areas and just sand those areas out.
Okay, or if you want to, you can mix up a thinner version, spray on a thin coat if you want to. All right, I've thought of maybe doing that. All right, but anyhow, you have reached this stage where you have filled the paper. Again, another comment?
I just want to say one thing. The difference between sanding at 99.9% and 85 or 90%, the difference in the weight is negligible.
Right. My guess, 99.9% is wrong, more than likely. All right, there's still a lot of filler on there in places. It's very thin in places. It just has like a slight orange tinge if I used orange paint. It's got some more thicker places over here, but basically you've gotten most of it off the airplane. So you've gotten to that point. Now what do? Then you throw your brush away and you get out the spray stuff. Get out the compressor, get out your touch-up gun. Now everything else after this is sprayed on. I spray on a coat of clear, thin, 100%, Sig Light coat, let it dry, very lightly sand it with 400 grit. We're using black stuff now. Okay, we're using the wetter dry, sanded dry. Bob?
might want to tell him on this step, I know that Wendy's tried it.
I'm not getting into what he did. Oh my God.
Don't start. You know, like you're talking about, we're all trying shortcuts to get this lighter. Now, if you went to a coat of silver at this point, you would inevitably have gone through to the paper in spots, and the silver's going to look like shit. So the coat of clear will help you eliminate that, and light. I'm not talking like lay on 6 ounces of clear at this point.
Right, just a thin coat of clear, it
It kind of reseals what you just brushed
yes,
back up.
yes, and it puts a sheen, you can see a sheen on it, all right? You can see some places that, gee, you sanded through too much of the filler, brush on a little, dab on more filler, sand that off, respray a little bit of clear here and there. Keep redoing it. If it isn't good enough, redo it. That separates front row from middle of the row at the nats, if that's important. To a lot of us, it isn't. You want an attractive airplane good enough? Fine. All right? Nothing wrong with that. Bob?
So what Steve's saying now, that clear will also, you got to remember, you used a lot of talc. I don't use quite that mixture. But you've remelted some of that because you do have a lot of talc. And that's where, when you get to your finish and you pick the tape up and you see it coming with it,
right.
That will help eliminate that.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to paint on top of a layer of talc.
Than if you went to silver at that point.
Right.
And that, I guess, you'll have to experiment with that.
Thank you, Bob. Vic?
While we're in the topic of building up the foundation, I have something that's even more work than that.
Concrete?
Get your entire finish with clear. I use nitrate clear. I don't use the SIG clear, right up to my color. And I put as many as 10, I've had as many as 15 coats of clear over the paper, sanding the finish right into the clear, and I've used absolutely no filler. The Crusader was done that way. There's absolutely no filler on that airplane. It's a lot of work.
I'll get to an example of that in a minute, all right? And this is why I was looking for shortcuts. Spray on one coat, sand it, spray on a second coat, lightly sand it. All right. Look good, you can see a sheen in the light, looks okay, no real dull spots where it still needs some form of sealer over the tissue. Silver. Time to spray silver and see what you really have, okay? Is it going to be perfect? No. It's not going to be perfect. A, are you going to have a silver airplane? If you're going to have a silver airplane, it better damn well be perfect because that's your base color coat. All right? If you're just spraying... Right?
End of discussion. Back in the kitchen.
We're almost done. We're almost done.
The girls will be right here, Steve. Hey! Way to go, Andrew!
We're almost done. We're not going to do any more sanding, no more spraying. That's it. Spray it with silver. All right, you'll see some flaws here and there. How to fix a flaw? Gee, if you didn't notice that you sanded through, then you're going to have to put on another coat of that filler, sand it off, airbrush on a little bit of silver. First, 2 coats of clear first to seal that talc. Any powder that's left on the surface that you can't vacuum off. I use a vacuum. All right, you got to vacuum that talc out of there as much as possible because no, you don't want to paint on top of talc. It'll come right off with your masking tape. All right, but fix it. Fix it. You see an imperfection, fix it. Bob?
So, Steve, you might add that you could wipe this down with paper towels on prep salt.
Yes.
Like we need to do
Yes.
to get that extra dust off.
Oh yeah, keep as much dust off, keep cleaning the thing, keep cleaning your hands. Take your watch off, take your ring off. You should have done that months ago. Put them in your pocket.
Clip your fingernails.
Right, clip your fingernails. Personal hygiene is important, right, Nick? Tell us about your personal hygiene.
See if you're an office man.
I wiped that at Dorset.
Dorsal, wiped it out.
Thursday, rubbing that thing out, I stuck my fingernail right into the Dorset.
Yep. Remove your fingernails. All right? No metal objects. Just about. It gets to be pretty weird. I'm a fighter. And when you're finally taping and all that, you wash your hands so much. I broke out in a rash last year. I had a rash in between, like I had poison ivy. It was awful. Anyway, we're up to silver, and it's perfect, right? Because you fixed everything.
It's never perfect.
Never. Everything. All right. Okay, then hit it with as little base color coat paint as you can get away with. If you want to use white, put it on almost white. Because if you're going to put a nice trim scheme and all that, who the hell's going to tell? Really, Was the Zap machine that won the Concourse Award in '91, was that white? No. That was almost white. Last year's was almost white. The one I built 3 years ago was almost white. Because once it's really white, you put on one coat too many. It's too heavy.
4 coats too many.
Yeah, maybe 4 coats too many, all right? I've used SIG products all the way up to this point. They're very consistent. I like them. That's the only, blurb I'll do for them at this point in time. I'm not going to get into taping. Detailing, that's for Vic later on. Your clear coat, once you're all done with your trim, you got all your detail, your electroset, your pilot, you got all that junk on there, you got rockets and bombs and junk, okay?
You guys are building wings, I'm building ordnance.
Right, ordnance, all right? This is the year of the ordnance. If you don't have ordnance on your airplane, you're nowhere. I know I'll have some ordnance on mine this year when we get to Flushing. All right, a lot of clears hanging around these days, a lot of clear coats hanging around these days. Good old SIG light coat clear still works great. Still works great. Why did I use Deltron? PP&G. No, it tastes good. Why did I use that 2 years ago for the first time? I let Jimmy Casale try it first on his airplane. I did. Does it work? Yeah, it works. Good. Is it compatible? Yeah, it seems good. Okay, I'll buy some. It's $75 for one airplane. Actually, it's the catalyst that goes bad rather quickly within a week or 2 weeks after you open it. So basically, it's about a $25 a quart catalyst. You don't really use that much, so you can get by with spending less. But your first cash outlay for a clear coat of PP&G Deltron DAU 82, which I used the last 2 years, will cost you $75. Unless you got a friend in a body shop that uses it. All right, he can give you some. Bob?
He did this new stuff I was telling you about called chroma base.
Not yet.
Okay.
Like I said, there's a lot of clear coats. All right, Imron. Gee, what happened to Imron? Imron's dangerous as hell. Deadly.
Look what it did to Wendy.
Right.
Case closed.
Imron is deadly. It's an acrylic enamel. It's a carcinogen. It will give you cancer. It will kill you.
So what?
There will be a... Right. This is important.
Can you win the concourse war or not? That's what we care about.
All right.
Who cares about the
Deltron,
white?
how dangerous is Deltron? I don't know.
It's dangerous.
It's not as
now.
dangerous. It is something that you should take all precautions that you can possibly take, just like spraying any kind of paint except watercolor paint. All right, you want to have a good ventilation, you want a good mask. All right, you want all that protective stuff that you possibly can. All right, it's a volatile substance. Okay, why did I use it? Well, once I tried out this fluorescent paint, that old neon stuff that nobody uses anymore. Okay, you wouldn't be caught dead with on your airplane, right? The Pactra makes this stuff for Lexan car bodies. It's sprayed on the inside because the clear plastic bodies are nice and shiny as they are, all right? And the paint doesn't have to be nice and shiny. It's a shark skin texture. It's got 200 times the surface area that you think it does. That's why it's fluorescent. That's why it's neon. It's a shark skin. Boy, does that absorb dope. Sucks it right in. The pink will suck 10 coats of black in and disappear somewhere. I don't know where it went. I said, uh-oh. How many coats of SIG light coat am I going to have to put on? 6 gallons to get a shine on this thing? I didn't know. So that's when the experiments started taking place. I talked with Bob Hunt, he's used this. I talked with this guy, used that. Get the stuff to Jimmy, let him practice with the stuff. It seems to work okay. That's the truth. That's the truth. He practiced. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. So, again.
See what Deltron does to you?
Right.
Added a hobby in one shot.
I needed a clear that didn't evaporate. I needed a clear that didn't sink in to this stuff. It would harden on the surface. I know epoxy does that, but that is not what I wanted to use. Epoxy also has a tendency to yellow. And I didn't want that. I had a white airplane, not a yellow airplane. So we went with the Deltron. It goes on looking wet third, and a third regular paint part of it, a third catalyst, and a third thinner. Temperature variant thinners are available. Spraying in cool, moderate, hot weather type of thing, those three are available. Sprayed it on, looked wet. It's all again in parts. All the control surfaces I spray separately. I paint separately. I detail separately. I try to make sure that the masking lines are, pretty close to each other when they go over the hinge lines. But it's sprayed on. 2 years ago, the 60 power Zap machine, I gave it 2 coats. Last year's ship, I just gave 1 quick coat. It looks wet. It stays looking wet, and you can pick it up and carry it around 10 minutes after you spray it. It hardens on the surface. All right, it has excellent adhesion, and it is fuel proof. All right, am I going to use it again? Yes, absolutely. It'll be on my next ship and probably the next ship if they're still making it. Unless you find something cheaper, it does the job just as well. Vic? Rubs out. Oh, wow. You can start wet sanding it 36 hours after you put it on. All right, you wet sand it first. You rough it up with 1,000 grit. Don't even think of getting 600 grit near this airplane. All right, 1,000 grit, wet, rough it up. 1,200, do most of your work with 1,200. Again, foam blocks or by hand in certain places. Watch the corners, because it'll go through like that. Most of your work is with 1,200. Then I go to 2,000 grit. Oh my God. This is the 3rd time I'm wet sanding this airplane. It's 2,000 grit and it's starting to really look shiny because you're removing the scratches. Each process you're removing more and more scratches. Bob?
Are you sanding here with water when you say wet or prep soap?
Water. Pure water. No soap, no additive, no nothing. Just water. After a while it gets pretty murky and thick and pretty. I do it in the garage. You got to see my garage floor. It obliterates the oil stains and stuff like that. I have orange, blue, and green. Well, it's terrible, but it wet sands very, very nicely. After the 2,000 grit, you can go, if you want to do polishing compound, although you may not need to at that point. I then would go to a product that Mike Rogers has turned me on to called liquid ebony. Get it in a quart can. It's a black polishing liquid, black liquid, enough to do 8 Greyhound buses. You will have this for the rest of your life. One pattern.
One small pattern.
All right. This is polished in, and it really removes the scratches very, very nicely. So each process of the buffing out process is an effort to remove scratches. You get more shine until you get a real rock-hard glass-like shine. Then wax it a couple of times and go fly. Mike, question?
You're going to use a wheel.
A wheel.
A bonnet. It's really important to use an all lamb's wool wheel.
You hear that?
Nothing with any synthetic fibers, because it will not bring up the shine.
Mike says if you're going to use a buffing wheel on a machine, on a drill type of machine, use all lamb's wool. Don't use any synthetic material in the wheel itself, or else what will happen, Mike? Will it melt?
It won't bring up the shine.
It won't. All lamb's wool. Look for that. Swirling? Okay, I've never used a machine. I've always done it by hand. Bob?
I followed your recommendation and tried that on a Saturday night. I'm very satisfied with it in that, like you said, it sands with 1200 very easily, and then you can use, I use silver polish and just straight lines, so I didn't have any kind of swirl marks in the airplane. And then I used the liquid ebony glazing compound, and it comes up very easily. It's the easiest stuff to rub I've ever rubbed.
Yes, Mike, what is on
the
that?
downside to any of that stuff is, that should be known,
Yeah.
is that it's not repairable 100%.
I've heard it is. If you very lightly sand, say 1,000 grit the area that you need to repair, and then airbrush it on. I have to try this.
It's not as good as dope or lacquer type of stuff.
Okay.
Try it on your plane, Steve.
Well, I have to try this. Again, a real quick story to add to this. Last year's Zap machine 2, the little one, the Jaguar with a 46 in it. I was up visiting a friend in Massachusetts, Eric Jensen. We were flying at his field. I decided to tape the hinge lines, the elevator hinge line, put new tape back there, all right? Flip the thing over, put it on a sheet and all that kind of a thing. Well, dummy me forgot to close the vent the uniflow vent for the tank, and fuel leaked out, and there it is, making a puddle right on the nose of the airplane. 15 minutes worth of sitting there, all right? Well, I had forgotten that I had, like in very light places, buffed through the one thin coat of Deltron I put on the airplane in a few places, all right? And when I picked it up, well, you know, horrors of horrors, the fuel, 10% nitro, raw fuel, all right, had gotten underneath the Deltron, between the Deltron, and it kind of puckered it in little places, all right, up on and between the SIG dope and the Deltron. It did nothing to the SIG dope. I don't know why. It removed the ink lines, so we're going to have to put them on, but I got to repair that, and I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted on that. Bob, one
more comment on all this stuff.
One more.
All right. Imran, the DAU82 Deltron, any of the catalyzed urethane paints contain toluene diisocyanates and light stable aliphatic isocyanates. What that means is light stable aliphatic.
Mike, write that down. Write that down. Let's go.
In English. This stuff can kill you. Not make you sick, can kill you. It's number 3 on the toxicity scale, which means can cause immediate death if you're sensitized to it. Both Wendy and I have been damaged to our bronchial passages using this stuff, not realizing what it was at first. I think Wendy even spent some time in the hospital because of it.
That's a good point.
I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying if you do use it, be extremely careful to follow all of the safety precautions. Use paper clothing, use an air-fed respirator, go to somebody else's house to shoot it so it doesn't get in.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go to Scott Smith's house, Athens, New York. Yeah, go ahead.
Jimmy's house, whatever.
Jimmy's house is good.
I suggest Jimmy's house.
Okay. There was a thing I wanted to mention. Vic, you had made a comment earlier about 200 coats of clear, I'm exaggerating, to bring it up without using filler. Years ago in model aviation, I'm not sure who was writing the control line stunt column at the time, but Gene Martin did a guest informational thing on how he finished his Mariner. First 20-point airplane ever at the Nats. Perfect appearance points. Never saw the plane in person, saw not enough photos of it, all right, but gorgeous. He went on page after page after page of how he did this. Now, it was a little difficult to kind of keep track of this, so I said, all right, I'm clever. I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to draw wood down at the bottom, all right? Then sand, let's see, sanding will be a squiggly line, and a dashed line will be clear. So I layered it on a piece of paper from wood all the way up. I basically drew the finish. Each process somehow was drawn on there, some kind of a symbol clear across the page. I ran out of paper. So I had to switch and go to an 8.5 by 14 legal size. Okay, okay, we started wood, because I was only halfway through his finishing process with a regular sized piece of paper. So again, up to the legal size, I ran out of paper. Had to go to 11 by 17, 17 inches. Each stage was this high, 1/4 of an inch. That's how much space I gave each sample, and I took the entire page. There was something like 35 coats somewhere along the line put on that airplane and taken off in some way, shape, or form.
Has to be an easier way.
There's got to be an easier way. I think mine is a little easier, but don't neglect the fact or ignore the fact or think you're going to get away with something. You're not. If you want a top-notch finish like some of the airplanes you see here, it is a lot of work. You have to be dedicated to it, you have to have a goal in mind, and you have to stick to that goal. You're going to want to show people. Jim Borelli, you want to make front row at the Nats, right? Front row at the Nats. Oh, was that a lot of work? That was a lot of work.
Tell us the truth.
Just ask my wife.
Right? Yeah, we know. She told me the truth. There's a lot of work. Mike Rogers, a lot of work. Wendy, you've won the concourse 3 times. Is that a lot of work?
Not at all.
Not at all. Imran. Imran. Yeah, it's a lot of work. Would I do it again?
Never.
I might do it again.
Say no to
Only
drugs.
because of the personality I have. Bob, would you do it?
Oh, I've never done it.
See?
That's what they all say.
Would you like someone here to show you how?
Do you put as much work in your flying as you put in your finishes?
No. Oh, heck no. No, this is a beauty event. This is not a flying event. You know that. For Christ's sake, I mean, the appearance points are all out there. At least what? 6% of the entire score that you could possibly get?
This is all fine, but get the line down first.
Yes, but how many times have you heard somebody come back from the Nats and say, I got second place because of one damn appearance point?
Whoa!
Right?
That's hidden below the belt, Steve.
How many people have said that one appearance points cost me the Nats? That's bull.
Whoa.
That's bull. That's bull. You can win the Nats with 5 appearance points. Who cares? Who cares? You gotta care. That's what counts. You gotta care to make an airplane look like that. You gotta do the work. Nobody else is gonna do the work for you. You gotta do it. So you gotta set a goal and you gotta stick to it. That's the secret. That's it for me. Lunch, right?
Hold just a second. Wait.
Everybody wants to eat and it's sitting there. There is plenty of food, so eat what you want. Anybody that doesn't get the prop wash, the newsletter from the club, sign up for it. It's $10 a year. If you want a sample copy, it's up on the front desk. And Rich Stevenie's got the sign for the Cardinal kit. So everybody sign up for that Cardinal kit. $5 a piece or $5 to $20. We'll have the raffle at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Yes.